Something shifted in the days after the fifth win. Not in the ring. He stood in front of 3 reporters outside a Miami gym, sweat still cooling on his shoulders, and realized they were asking questions differently now. Not about the fight, about him. Their pens hovered. Their eyes stayed fixed. The silence between his words felt heavier than anything said inside the ropes. One reporter leaned forward slightly, waiting. That lean meant something. The air in Miami carried weight that year. Salt and heat pressed close, and every surface seemed to watch. The gym sat 2 blocks from the beach, close enough to hear waves between rounds, far enough that the ocean never cooled anything. Training sessions stretched long under fluorescent light. The rhythm of fists on leather-filling rooms where no one spoke unless they had to. Sweat pooled on concrete floors. The heavy bag swayed after each combination, its chain creaking in the same tired rhythm day after day. He moved through those spaces like everyone else, controlled and efficient, but something underneath had begun to pull in a different direction. The body had learned its lessons. The hands knew their work. Now the mouth wanted permission to move. Reporters came more often after fights. They clustered near the locker room door, notebooks open, questions ready. Some had deadline pressure in their eyes. Others looked bored before anyone spoke. Most fighters gave them 3 sentences and walked away. Standard answers. Clean exits. He noticed that. He noticed how quickly their attention drifted. How Azali, a name disappeared from a page when someone offered nothing to hold on to. The ones who stayed quiet got written about once, maybe twice, then nothing. Their names turned into results, numbers in small print, records that no one remembered. He started answering longer, not louder, longer. When they asked how he felt, he didn't just say, "Good." He told them why, gave them a sentence that led somewhere. When they asked about his opponent, he didn't shrug. He smiled first, then spoke. Small adjustments, calculated without feeling calculated. His voice stayed even, his posture loose, but his eyes never left theirs. He watched their hands. When a pen moved faster, he knew something had landed. When it stopped, he adjusted. He was learning to hold attention the way he'd learned to hold his guard. Distance. Timing. Control. Control. The first time a reporter asked a follow-up question, not fear. Recognition. They wanted more. That meant he'd given them something worth pursuing. He answered carefully, offering just enough to satisfy without closing the door completely. The conversation stretched longer than usual. Other fighters waited nearby, glancing, Aubert wondering why the questions kept coming. He felt their impatience like static in the air, but didn't rush his answers, let them wait. Angelo Dundee watched from the corner. Arms crossed. Face unreadable. His eyes tracked everything, the way they always did. After one session, when the reporters finally left and the gym settled back into its usual rhythm, Dundee approached. He didn't smile, didn't offer praise, just said 6 words. Timing matters more than volume. He didn't explain further, didn't elaborate or soften it with encouragement. He didn't need to. The lesson sat there, clear and sharp, and it studied. It joined every other principle Dundee had drilled into him. How to slip, when to counter, where to place your feet. This was the same discipline, just applied differently. The ring wasn't the only place where timing determined survival. The gym walls held old fight posters, names that used to mean something, faces no one remembered anymore. Corners' torn colors faded from years of humid air. He looked at them sometimes between rounds, wondering what they'd sounded like, if anyone had listened. If they'd known how fast forgetting happened. You could be the best in a room and still vanish the moment you stepped outside it. The thought tightened in his chest every time a reporter closed a notebook without writing his name down first. Every time someone's eyes drifted toward the door. He felt erasure happening in real time and understood that silence wasn't neutrality. It was disappearance. There was danger in speaking. He felt it every time he opened his mouth in front of a microphone. Words could turn against you faster than a missed punch. Say too much, and you're arrogant. Cocky. Someone who doesn't know his place. Say too little and you're nobody. Forgettable. Another name in a record book that no one opens. He tested the line carefully, leaning into sentences just far enough to make someone pause, never far enough to make them recoil. It required the same precision as slipping a jab. 1 degree too far in either direction, and the whole thing collapsed. The balance felt impossible some days, but he kept searching for it. The press conferences grew longer, not by design, but by pull. Someone would ask a question meant for the headliner, and the mic would drift toward him instead. Slowly, almost accidentally. But it drifted. He never reached for it. Never interrupted or pushed forward. He just answered when it came close enough. His words weren't sharp yet. They didn't cut or provoke or demand anything, but they landed. Clean. Direct. People remembered them afterward. Repeated. Tem. That was enough for now. Maybe more than enough. Some nights he lay awake in cheap hotel rooms on the road, replaying conversations in his head. What he'd said, what he should have said. How the reporter's face had changed or hadn't. Whether anyone would write it down. Whether it mattered at all. The ceiling fan turned slowly overhead, blades clicking with each rotation, and he wondered if this mattered at all. If words could do anything, a fist couldn't. The bed was too soft, the walls too thin. He could hear other fighters in nearby rooms, some snoring, some watching television. None of them seemed to carry this weight. The uncertainty pressed heavier than exhaustion, settling in his shoulders, his jaw, his chest. Sleep came late when it came at all, and when it finally arrived, it never felt deep enough. Morning training carried the residue. His hands moved correctly. His feet stayed balanced, but his mind was elsewhere, turning over sentences, testing phrases he might need later. Dundee noticed. Didn't say anything directly, just pushed the sessions harder. More rounds. Faster combinations, as if trying to exhaust the thinking out of him. It didn't work. The thinking stayed. Dundee never told him to stop talking. That mattered more than any encouragement could have. Some trainers would have shut it down immediately, told him to let his hands do the work, reminded him that fights aren't won with interviews. Dundee just watched. Adjusted. When a reporter asked a question designed to provoke, Dundee's eyes would flick toward him, a warning so subtle it was almost invisible. Don't take that one. Let it pass. And he did. Every time. The restraint felt harder than any physical training. Knowing when to be silent required more control than knowing when to move. It meant holding something back when every instinct wanted to release it. That discipline cut deeper than anything learned in the ring. Other fighters noticed. In the locker room, in the hallways, glances came sideways. Conversations quieted when he approached. A few made comments, jokes about talking too much, about needing attention, about forgetting what the job actually was. The words came wrapped in laughter, but the edges were sharp. He didn't respond, not directly, didn't defend himself or explain, but he felt the distance growing between him and the ones who stayed quiet. They thought silence made them serious, professional, respectful. He was starting to believe it made them forgettable, that their unwillingness to speak was just another way of accepting invisibility. He didn't say that, but it felt Italiano, and feeling it was enough to keep moving forward. There was a fight in Atlanta. Small venue. Modest purse. The crowd was thin, the lighting harsh, but he won cleanly. Controlled. Afterward, a local reporter asked him if he thought he'd be champion someday. The question hung there, obvious and loaded. Every answer felt like a trap. Yes, made you a fool. No, made you a liar. He smiled instead, didn't answer directly. Said something about taking it one fight at a time, about respecting the process. The reporter nodded and moved on. But later, alone, he felt the weight of what he hadn't said. The truth, sitting locked behind his teeth. If I don't tell people who I am, someone else will decide it for me. The thought, wouldn't leave. That thought didn't leave. It followed him back to Miami, into the next training camp, through the next set of questions. He started speaking with more certainty. Not about outcomes, about presence. When someone asked how he felt before a fight, he stopped saying, nervous or ready. He said, prepared. When they asked about his opponent, he stopped deflecting. He acknowledged them clearly, then redirected attention back to his own work. The shift was subtle, almost invisible, but the notebooks stayed open longer. Some reporters liked him. A few wrote favorably, calling him confident, charismatic, someone worth watching. Others, bristled, used words like cocky, overconfident, self-absorbed. He read every article he could find, learning how the same sentence could be framed two entirely different ways, depending on who held the pen. That understanding sharpened something inside him. If he was going to be written about, he needed to control what they wrote, or at least make it harder for them to ignore him. Dundee never said much about the press, never offered strategies or scripts. But after one particularly long post-fight interview, when they were alone in the gym late at night, he offered something close to approval. The gym was empty, just the two of them and the sound of the ventilation system humming overhead. You're learning, Dundee said. Just don't let them read you completely. Keep something back. Always. He turned away before the words could settle into anything resembling sentiment. The words settled into place, alongside every other lesson. Timing, distance, control, restraint. It was all the same discipline, whether you were in the ring or outside it. The only difference was what you chose to reveal and when. There were moments when doubt crept in, when he wondered if this path led anywhere useful, if talking made any real difference, if people cared about anything beyond the final bell, if winning wasn't enough on its own. Those thoughts came late at night, mostly. In the quiet hours, when there was no one to perform for, when it was just him and the uncertainty and the question of whether any of this mattered. But then a reporter would ask his name first, before anyone else's. Or someone in the crowd would recognize him on the street, 2 blocks from the gym, calling out to him like they knew him. Or another fighter would mention hearing about him from someone who'd read something somewhere. Small confirmations, barely visible, but enough to keep moving forward, enough to suggest that something was building. The voice was still finding its shape. It wasn't loud yet, wasn't sharp or cutting or impossible to ignore. It didn't demand anything or challenge anyone, but it was deliberate. It was is. And for the first time, people were starting to listen not because they had to, but because they wanted to, because something in the way he spoke made them lean forward instead of back. That distinction mattered more than any win, more than any record or ranking. Because a win could be forgotten, a good performance could fade. But attention, once earned, could be built on. Late one night, after another fight, another set of questions, another notebook closing with his name inside it, he sat alone in the locker room and let the silence settle. His hands were taped. His body was tired, but something else felt awake. The understanding that the fight didn't end when the bell rang, that the real work happened in the space between rounds, in the words chosen carefully, in the moments when no one thought you were paying attention. He didn't know where this led, couldn't see the shape of what was coming, but he felt it forming. The mouth was learning to move with the same precision the fists had mastered, and once it started, there would be no turning it back. No returning to silence. No retreat into being unremarkable. The door had opened. Whatever waited on the other side would have to be faced without the option of going back. He unwrapped his hands slowly. The tape fell in loops onto the floor. His knuckles were swollen but not damaged. The hands alone wouldn't be enough anymore. He knew that now, the voice would have to carry as much weight as the fists. Maybe more. Because people forgot punches. They forgot combinations and footwork. But they remembered what you said, whether you gave them a reason to care. Before anyone shouted, someone had to learn to speak.